And welcome to WaveTalkers Live. I'm Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. And today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Dan, NR6V. And today we're going to be talking about situational awareness listening for emergency communications. Before we dive in any further, though, let's go ahead and do the regular old check-in that we normally do at the beginning of each of our shows. So give me just a second to pull Dan off the screen so it's a little bit easier to see. There you go. So if you have access to Winlink, go ahead and send us a Winlink check-in. Use the actual Winlink check-in form. We'll step through that process here in just a second. Send it to all four of our call signs, KK6DA, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign, WaveTalkers. In the comments section of that form, we'd like you to answer today's question, which is, where do you look for emergency information? Let's go ahead and jump over to the PC real quick. I'm going to turn around over to this other side here. And let's step through the process of sending that check-in. So if you have access to Winlink, make sure you have Winlink open. And what you're going to do is come up here to the upper left, just click on the new message button. When it opens up, it'll open up looking something like this. You're going to click on the select template button here in the top, and then go ahead and click the little plus next to standard templates. And you're looking for either general forms or these mapping GIS forms. We'll go ahead and go into the mapping GIS forms. It's just aliases for the same information. Any forms inside of Winlink that are mappable will appear inside of this mapping GIS form section. So you're just going to come down here to the bottom. You'll find Winlink check-in.txt. Just go ahead and give that a double click. And if the demo gods are with you, it should open up your web browser of choice. Now, a couple of things to note. First of all, if you have previously saved any of the data that's in here so that your form is pre-populated, make sure that you click on this little date and time field so you get the current date and time for right now today so that your check-in will get mapped. It's a nice little feature that the Winlink team has been able to add into here for us. So we'll say, okay, yeah, this is going to be an exercise, so make sure that is selected. For band, if you're going to be checking in via Telnet, you can leave this set to NA. Otherwise, go ahead and select the band you're going to be sending your traffic on. Then for mode, go ahead and select the mode that you're going to use. I'm going to leave mine set to Telnet. Send to, this is where we're going to plug in each of our call signs, W0DHG, KK6DA, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call of WaveTalkers. You're going to go ahead and fill in the rest of this information here at the top. Make sure your latitude and longitude is filled in. And this is the space right here for you to fill in that question. Where do you look for emergency information? Go ahead and hit the submit button. Once you do, you may get a pop-up asking you if you would like to rename the form. You don't need to do that. You can just go ahead and close your browser window. It should pre-populate all the information in here for you. Go ahead and post that to your outbox and then go ahead and send that message via whichever method you would like. I'm going to go ahead and use the Telnet session here. I'm going to open the session, come over here and click the start. And let's see if we've got any check-in forms coming in. And it looks like we certainly do. We've got check-ins coming from all over the place. I'm going to go ahead and hit the download there. And down towards the end of the show, we will come back into here and we'll check again to make sure we get all of the check-ins, and then we'll map and see where everyone's coming from. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to my main camera here. And then let's see, we're going to go here. We're going to turn that on. We're going to go back to the slides. Let me see if I can make myself, whoops, not that one. I want to see myself appear in the corner. Does that work? Down there. There I am. Hey, look at that. Sometimes it works. Got to love all the technology that's here. So today, we're going to be talking about a roadmap that was derived from my own lessons learned during the Thomas Fire in Ventura, California. This took place it started on December 4th, 2017. At the time, I was a mere mortal. I was not a ham radio operator at the time. This really is why I became a ham radio operator. So if you're curious to read more into this story, you can go onto my blog, go to chrismattia.com. and just look for the article. It's a series of articles. It's about 5 articles that I did on why I became a ham. And I document a lot more. I go into a lot more detail than what we just have here inside of this presentation. So who is this presentation for? Well, it's for emergency communicators and those who are interested in learning about emergency communications to improve their own situational awareness. And we're not going to try and turn you all into experts. I am certainly not an expert in these areas. This is all based on my own experience of the things that I learned during that experience. And remember, at the time, I was not a ham. I got my ham radio license after at the very end of the Thomas fire. But we're going to step through a lot of the things that became incredibly helpful in that time. So what we're mostly talking about here is the early stages of an emergency incident. We're not talking about when the incident has been going on for long periods of time. We're talking about those very first minutes, hours, and sometimes even days of a major incident. And we're talking about the different things that you're able to do in order to gather and find correct information. And so what you're really looking for is official in these early stages, official public communication channels, they're still usually being established. They're not generally readily available right at the start of an incident, because the folks, the first responders that are going out there responding to the incident, they're in the very first stages of getting that set up. Maybe incident command is still getting set up. All of those things are still in process. So in these very early stages, there's not a lot of public information that's available. News media has usually yet to arrive on scene. And even when they do arrive on scene, they have to start finding the story. They've got to capture the footage. They got to talk to people. They got to find out what's going on. There is a delay. There is some amount of time that it takes for them to get set up, for everything to kind of all of their internal logistics to be rerouted in order to go live. It's not something that just instantaneously happens. And even when that does happen, they're not necessarily always telling the entire story of what's going on. So these things are sometimes not available to you yet. When it comes to social media, you'll oftentimes conflicting, outdated, and incorrect information, and that can be really pervasive. And the more you get into doing this, the more you find that becomes a huge problem, because people instantly go to social media and they start looking for the information. If you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know how to parse the information, then you're going to end up having a lot of difficulty finding out what's going on for proper situational awareness. Oops, that's the one that I want. The other challenge is oftentimes power, phones, and internet may be either out or intermittent. I'm seeing hold on, I'm getting a text that's coming in. Yeah, it's oftentimes these are some of the biggest challenges of when we need the resources of volunteers the most. Okay, so power, phone, internet, all of these things might be out, they might be intermittent. So what we're trying to do here is we're talking about learning how to listen to EmComm traffic. And we're listening for 3 things in particular. And it's the critical 3 things: the what, the where, and the when. Those 3 pieces of information. Notice there's, a lot of times you think of like the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. Why doesn't matter in the first stages of an incident. Usually it's what is happening, where is it happening, and all of the associated when. So when is it, how fast is it moving, what direction is it moving? So all of that information is what you need to figure out in the most immediate stages of an incident. The 3 things that you're looking for is official and trusted sources, as much as you can find them. Again, in the early stages, many of the traditional types of official sources may not be up and running yet, but what you're still looking for is some way to tap into that information. You're looking for primary data sources. Now, what the heck do I mean by primary data sources? Is the nightly news a primary data source? No, that's a secondary data source. That's somebody who's gone out in the field and they're reporting on the information that's there. Primary data sources would be things like the incident commander, who is telling the teams where to go and where to access the fire. Maybe transponder data that's coming directly in off of the aircraft that are operating within the zone. All of those things are primary data sources. And if at all possible, those are the places that you want to start to learn how to listen to if you're able to at all. The third one is current information. And this becomes a huge deal, especially when you fold social media into the mix, because as the engine of social media starts getting up and running very quickly, people who are just joining on are going to start seeing older information and they're like, hey, I want to engage with that. And then social media is going to raise that information up to the top. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as this goes on. So this is our framework that we're talking about today. It's all about learning to listen, and it's about developing your own roadmap to finding this information. So I'd like to take you back to December 4th, 2018. It's approximately 6:30 p.m. My wife and I are driving to dinner along this very highway that you see this picture from. And this is a light traffic day that you're seeing in this picture, because at about 6:30 on December 4th, 2018, the 2 was an absolute parking lot. It was completely jam-packed with cars. Nothing was moving at all. We were on our way to dinner, and suddenly my phone pops up with a Twitter alert saying something along the lines of fire in Ventura County. So I'm not going anywhere very fast. I'm pretty much sitting completely still. And I think, well, I'm from Ventura County. Where is what's going on? I'm driving, so I'm not going to spend time looking on Twitter. Instead, I just quickly opened up the police scanner app that I already had installed on my phone. Remember, I'm not a ham at this point. I opened up the police scanner app, and I had already previously favorited the Ventura County Fire Dispatch channel, which is available on the app. So I was able to click into it, and I could start listening to some of the traffic that was going on. I could hear kind of what's happening at this point. So at that particular time, the Thomas Fire, which it became known as, it didn't have a name at that point. Names for fires and major incidents are often assigned based on the location where that incident, as best the folks can tell, where it started. And so the Thomas Fire actually got its name from the Thomas Aquinas College, which was one of the start locations. But at this time, the Thomas Fire was at approximately 10 acres in size. It was largely in the Santa Paula area of Ventura County. And I'm kind of listening to the traffic that's going on, and I'm kind of taking in what's happening. And instantly questions started springing up in my mind. Where exactly was the fire? Now, you all may or may not know, but I am a severe asthmatic, and so I need to stay out of the smoke zone whenever fires are coming. So it's a big deal for me to start to know where a fire is and what direction it's moving, where is the wind blowing, because I really need to be able to get out of the smoke in order for me to be able to survive. So that's one of my first questions. Where the heck is this thing? How fast was it moving? Where do I find the map? There must be a map. At this point, I'm thinking there's got to be a map somewhere that's going to tell me where where all of this information is going on at. Well, the reality is there is no map at this point. There's no map that's publicly available. There's no general information aside from what's currently unfolding at that minute. So it's up to me to start to develop some of my own situational awareness. So here's what I did. And I've got a whole series of these pictures. I took my iPad and I took screenshots of the map of Ventura County. And as I'm listening, remember, I'm listening to that police scanner app. As I'm listening to the police scanner app and they're describing out where the fire is, where different things are going on, I'm literally taking my Apple Pencil and I'm sketching right on this screenshot to know roughly where that fire is located. Now, this is one of the sketches that I did, and this was at approximately 9:30 p.m. Now, remember, the fire, I got my first notification that it started right around 6:30-ish. I don't have the exact times, but roughly that kind of time frame. And so this is the direction that the fire had been moving. Now, that's a lot of movement, because if we start to look at the scale of what we're talking about here, from downtown Ventura in the lower left corner of the screen up to Santa Paula, where the fire started, that's approximately, roughly, about 15 miles. And in roughly 3 hours, the fire had covered half of that distance. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that for a wind-driven fire, the Santa Ana winds were blowing. Most of our fires here in Ventura County are wind-driven fires. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where that fire is going, where it's heading, and who is going to be in harm's way. That's the type of level of situational awareness that we're talking about, being able to develop, being able to parse some of this information and knowing where to look, where to listen for the information that you need to gather in order for you to maintain your own safety and the safety of others. So it did not take long. Just a few minutes after I'd come up with this little sketch, that the incident commander confirmed what I was suspecting. And what came over, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have an actual recording of that night, but basically what came over was divert resources to downtown, make a stand on the avenue. So the avenue in Ventura it's a street, and it's along the backside of the hill. But that became a very clear marker as to, hey, where are we talking about? And begin evacuating the city. That came out at roughly around this time, somewhere around the 9:30 time period or so. I could be off a little bit on the time-wise. It's been a couple of years since this went on, but that's basically what was happening at that point. So I instantly kind of changed over my mind from, let me just collect some information, to, wow, this is really serious. I have a lot of friends and family that are in the area. So I started reaching out to friends that were directly in harm's way. And what I discovered was power was out. Power was out all over Ventura County at this point, because the fire had actually cut one of the main power lines. I didn't know this at the time, but all of the power was out in the city. Voice cell service was out also. What's the very first thing that happens usually when you're inside of an emergency situation? A lot of people will pick their phones up and they're going to call mom or their brother or their sister or their husband or their wife or whoever, and they're starting to look for that information. Oops, I keep doing that. I keep pushing the wrong button. They start looking for that information to try and make a connection. And most of these cell companies are only able to handle a small percentage of their actual customers at any one time. So it overloads the circuits, and voice traffic becomes very difficult to get out. But text will still go through in most cases, not always, but in most cases. And so that's exactly what I did. I started texting all of my friends and coworkers and colleagues that I knew in the area, many of which were still getting home from work at this time, or had just gotten home. They didn't know what was going on. And this is a text that I got the next morning from one of my good friends. We grabbed our emergency bags after getting your text, and we headed out to the car. The flames were already coming down our street. We had no idea. We barely made it out. And that is exactly the type of thing that was going on. A lot of my friends all lost their homes in this. Luckily, none of the people that I knew actually lost their lives, but there were people who did, in fact, lose their lives in this situation. So the next morning, so this is now Tuesday morning, Tuesday the 5th, I was in Los Angeles. I was outside of the immediate zone. So this picture is taken from the rooftop of a little apartment that I was in. And that's the Thomas Fire in the background on the backside of that mountain. And that's about 85 miles away in the distance. So that's how big this thing got. Now, this did become, at the time, the largest fire in California history. So these are the tools that I have to work with at the time. I've got Twitter, and I have my police scanner radio, which is literally just an app on my phone. So let's dive into these just a little bit, because I want to try and unravel a little bit of the information that we've got going on here. So most every single application that's out there that is some kind of a police scanner app or so, those are all coming from this company called Broadcastify. And you can look them up online. It's just go to broadcastify.com. There's both free services that you can listen to live streams that are all over the world. And you can also, those feeds then feed directly into a lot of these different apps. So which app do you need? Doesn't matter. Pretty much any of the ones that are a scanner app are all getting their data from Broadcastify for the most part. There might be a few exceptions to that, but by and large, that's what's going on. And it's free to listen to. So you can just go to Broadcastify. You can plug these in and find them very quickly. A great way to be able to do that. Let me see if I have my phone here, and I'll bring it up because there's a really cool thing. Let me switch over to this real quick. So let's see, can you see my phone? Yeah, you can see my phone. So here on my news feed, the scanner app is one of the apps that I have here all the time. I'll go ahead and tap on that. And you'll notice that it comes up here and there's an option here for hot. And what this is doing is this is looking for where are the most listeners. You can see the number of listeners that are here. And during the Thomas Fire incident, it was very easy to see which was the feed that I needed to listen to, because it had the highest number of people, and the most number of people all over the world were listening to the Thomas Fire, what was going on. They were listening to dispatch. So I could just tap on that and then I could hear what was going on, even though I was outside of the area. It worked pretty well. I also had favorites, and you can see I had favorited Ventura County Fire previously, so I can just tap on that and I can listen to dispatch directly from here. So as I'm listening, I'm also following Twitter, and there's these two people at AI6YR_ham. And if you do not follow him, his name is Ben. You should follow him on Twitter. He's awesome. And the other person is VC Scanner. Now, these two in particular, I'm listening to the scanner app and I'm watching Twitter live as to what's happening, what's unfolding. And over and over and over, these two are tweeting what was about to come out of that scanner 10 seconds, 30 seconds, sometimes even a minute ahead of when I hear it coming out of the scanner. And I'm like, how the heck are these guys doing this? Like, I'm listening to the scanner and they're tweeting about it right away. So I reached out to Ben, AI6YR_ham. I reached out to him in a private message. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? How are you pulling this off? And he said simply, we're hams. We're listening to the radio, not to the app. And suddenly the light went on, like, oh, when somebody's listening to an app, when they're listening to a live stream, what's really happening there is Broadcastify, or whatever company is doing it, has to receive the audio feed. They have to compress it. They have to process it a little bit. They have to send it up to their servers. Their servers then reflect that back down over the commercial internet down to your internet service provider, who then delivers that file to you that you can then listen to. And all of those individual steps takes additional time. And these guys were listening live just on their own radio. Now, they were still just outside of the disaster zone, so they were able to focus on this stuff a little bit. They were not in the immediate disaster zone. And everything I'm talking about today, we're not talking about people who are directly inside of the disaster zone. Most of us are just outside of that area because we have access to some of these other tools. So it was at this point that I started scratching my head going, maybe I should get my ham radio license. That might prove to be pretty helpful. And then this happened. Ben tweets. This is, I'm in the way for seeing it. This is on December 11th, 2017. So this is just a couple of days after the fire started. And he tweets this picture up. And remember, my first question of what I wanted to know was, where is the fire? Where is it at? And you can see it. It's right there. And what this picture is it's the flight patterns of one of the helicopters from Cal Fire and from Ventura Fire that was going in and doing water drops on the fire, and it's the path that the aircraft was flying over and over. And you can see the three different front edges of that fire as they were doing those drops. It becomes very apparent. So what's the next thing that I did? I went online and I downloaded every single app that I could find that was doing flight tracking information so I could see that info. I'm like, that is a brilliant thing. That is absolutely cool to be able to see that. And I couldn't find a single app that was showing me those aircraft. Not a single one was showing them to me. So I called Ben again. I'm like, hey, Ben, what are you doing? Where are you getting the information? He says, we're hams. We're listening to air support transponder data and we're mapping it. And they're using open APIs. The transponder data is just going out there. They're able to find that information. And I see questions coming in the chat a little bit, and that information is in fact not encrypted. This is the actual transponder information that planes, as they're flying, are putting out pings as to what their location is for air traffic control. Many of the apps go ahead and do not show all of the aircraft that are out there, but it is possible to go in and listen to those data and see kind of where it is and then map it out. That turns out to be incredibly helpful information. It's like having information superpowers to be able to know kind of what's going on. It's a level of informational, situational awareness that becomes absolutely invaluable. So let's talk about some of the lessons learned about situational awareness listening and some of the gotchas and things to kind of try to avoid if you can. So the first thing is to know who to follow. And you want to follow, this is on Twitter. You want to follow, for instance, your fire department, your local fire department, your county fire department, your state fire department, state fire agency, emergency agency. If they have, more than likely, they've got a Twitter account that's going to have their whatever. So in Ventura County, it's VCFD. PIO, that's the Public Information Officer. You want to follow that person too, because that's the person who's putting out those public information, that's putting out a lot of real information that's really critical to be able to get. Subscribe to your local police department, sheriff's department, the National Weather Service. Go for all of those official accounts because they're the ones who are going to have the most vetted information. And that's what you're really looking for. You're looking for vetted information. That's not hearsay. It's not what Uncle Bob decided to say. It's not whatever the conspiracy theory of the day happens to be. It's the vetted information that you're actually looking for. In an emergency, that's absolutely critical to be able to have. The next thing is figure out which hashtags to follow. Now, on the screenshot on the left, I know it's probably a little difficult to see, but the Ventura VCFD PIO, the Public Information Officer, tweeted hashtag Thomas Fire. That is the hashtag, that is the official hashtag that is being used, if there is such thing as an official hashtag. A lot of times, most fires get named, as we said, for whatever the street location happens to be. So on this second screen here at the top, you can see hashtag Bonnie Fire. Yesterday, Dan calls me up. He says, hey, there's a fire that just broke out. And it turns out it was called the Bonnie Fire. How did we figure out it was called the Bonnie Fire? Well, we were listening to the incident commander and they kept saying Bonnie Fire, Bonnie Fire. And so what happened, there's this group called Fire Twitter now who's kind of sprung up. And these are all folks, a lot of them are hams, and they're tweeting about what's going on. And they will adopt that hashtag very quickly. And so that's one you want to follow. You just go ahead and click on it right on any of the tweets that you see. Usually you'll find it on an official tweet that's going to come out, and then you'll get all the information related to that particular incident all in one spot. It's an instantaneous filter. Next, once you find that hashtag, the very next thing you want to do is look at the very top of your screen on Twitter, and you'll notice that initially, if you're looking at the middle column, the thing that's highlighted is top. And what that means is Twitter is automatically taking any tweet that somebody has engaged with, and it's floating it to the top. And it's trying to make sure that the most popular tweets are the ones that you're going to see first. Those don't matter. The ones that matter are the latest tweets. So click that top column that says latest, and suddenly your screen is going to refresh. And I know this is a little difficult to see, but this screenshot was taken at 3:40 p.m. and this tweet is 48 minutes old. This tweet, or this screenshot, was taken at 3:41, so 1 minute later. This tweet is 2 minutes old. 2 minutes compared to 48 minutes is a huge difference in some of these instances. And so you really want to make sure that you're looking at the latest information as opposed to old information. Whenever you go on Twitter, you're going to see old information because you see the top tweets of whatever has floated to the top. So that's a really key bit of information for you to be able to look at.
Chris, you'll also note in that image that they've listed the hashtags they're following.
Yeah,
it may also give you a clue of some that you may want to follow.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point, Dan. And so you're looking at you're starting to figure out, you're trying to map out like who are the players, right? If you don't already have Ventura County Fire PIO, or in this case, the LA County, you're looking for the little @ call outs that they're calling out to people, and you're following them. There's also a tab here for people, and you can click on that people tab and it'll show you who's tweeting about this from there. And so it's another place to kind of start to find that information. But ideally, you're finding these key players in your area before you get into the incident, because you don't want to try and do this stuff all on the fly. You really want to have your accounts kind of built up, ready to go. Now, remember, this is back in 2017. Would I still do this today? And the reason I got that notification was because I had already subscribed to a couple of people and I had notifications turned on. So that's what popped it. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do that because for the most part, have turned my Twitter notifications off because there's just too much garbage out there on Twitter, unless there's some kind of incident going on. And then I laser focus on it. What I do instead is I use an app called PulsePoint. This is an app that's completely free. It's available on both Android and iOS, and it is absolutely amazing. So let me switch over here again, and I want to show you PulsePoint just a little bit. So I also keep it here in my news feed. So it's right on my home screen. It's right here inside of news. It's very easy to get to. I'll just go ahead and tap on PulsePoint. And when it first opens up, usually it comes into this listening. Now, what it's doing here is it's looking at the dispatch for your particular area. It's using your GPS to know where you're at. So as you're traveling around, it's automatically reselecting your different regions. So I've got a few that are plugged in here. So I live in Ventura County. So mine usually stays. You can see the little arrow that's up here for Ventura County. That's because that's currently where I'm at right now. But it also has ones that I'm following. So I follow also a lot of the LA ones as well, because fires don't care about county borders. They will burn from one county to the next and not even ask anybody about it. They'll just do it. So you kind of make sure that you have all of the information that you need. So here it's showing you what calls are going out, and you can quickly see here's some of the recent. Here's a fire that just happened a little while ago. This call went out at 12:26 p.m. today, and you can see all the information about it. There's a little divider line right here, recent. So these are the current active calls, and you can see who's out there on that call. If you tap this little button here in the upper right, it brings you up a map of the area. The ones that are gray, those are the old calls. Don't worry about those. The ones that are in red, those are the active calls. Those are the ones you care about. You can come down here. You can tap on any of them. Let's go. There we go. We'll go for that one. There we go. And you can see information about it. So you can see your location because your location is pinned on the map, and you can see kind of what the incident is. And you can get a little information about what that incident really is. So if it was a fire, it would have a little icon of a fire. If it's a rescue, it's going to show you a little rescue icon. Up at the top, there's this other little button. It looks like a speaker. This is freaking awesome, guys. Check this out. Tap that. We're now listening to dispatch. There's no need for an extra app for anything now. This is the app that I keep on my phone, and I keep it running pretty much all the time. You can even go in and you go into the little, there you go. There's dispatch coming in. I'm going to turn it off right now. So you can even go into the Morse section. You can go in and you can set up your preferences in here. If you know CPR, you can plug that in, and you might actually get a notification that, hey, one of your neighbors just called into 911. You're the closest person to them. They might send you a notification saying, hey, could you go help? That's kind of cool. You can also set in preferences in here to say, for me, anytime there's a brush fire within a certain radius around me, I want to know about it. It sends me a notification and I can quickly find out about what's going on. And I've got that instantaneous information right at my fingertips to kind of know what is going on where. And that is PulsePoint. It is an awesome, awesome app.
Chris, a key point about PulsePoint is that it is directly triggered from the fire department's computer-aided dispatch. This is not crowdsourced. This is directly from the computer-aided dispatch. The fire department subscribes. They set up a direct link. I've been in fire stations where I got a PulsePoint notification before the station was actually toned out on the call. So it's very fast, and it's directly triggered by the computer-aided dispatch in your fire department, assuming they subscribe, which hundreds of them around the country now do.
Yeah, I can't even begin to say enough nice things about PulsePoint. It is an amazing app. If you do not have it on your phone, go get it. You can either go to PulsePoint.com or just go to the App Store for whatever your platform is and go ahead and download it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was originally created for CPR, so that magic time between somebody having a heart attack and EMS arriving, citizen responders can be notified. And if you are set up that way, it will let you know that somebody in your area, the key is that they have to be in a public place, needs CPR, and you have the option of responding or not. Very cool app.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dan. So that's PulsePoint. The other thing you want to look for these days is look for the emergency information page for your particular area. So this didn't exist at the beginning of the Thomas Fire. This is in Ventura County. We have this thing called VC Emergency. And if you go to vcemergency.com, you can see what Ventura County is doing. It's really awesome. So we've got incident information, all the stuff that you want to know right away. Incident information, big link here. It'll take you right to that. It'll show you the incident maps of what is going on. What is the data that they have? It live feeds it out to the community now, much faster than it ever did before. COVID information. This has been a key button for the past couple of years. They added it up here because this is where everybody in the county needed information, all the stats, all the data, where to go. All that information is all right there. Incident summaries appear here when the information was last updated. And then this is pretty interesting right here. In Ventura County, this is a map of Ventura County here. Most of our fires are wind driven. Most of them, the big fires are wind driven. And so wind is a huge deal here. You got to know where the wind's blowing. That's going to tell you where the fire is going to go, when the situations are going to get really bad and out of control possibly. And they publish that wind data right there on the front page. There's also, like, if you don't know what some of the terminology is, there's terminology here. There's all kinds of information. If you're not familiar with it, definitely go check out vcemergency.com. There's some really great stuff on there for you to have a look at. Another one of the primary data sources that I love, that I learned about, and this I learned about when I got to visit the National Weather Service here in Oxnard, California. And it's an application, it's a website, so it's available for everybody. It's called Fire Weather Snooper. Just go to Fire Weather Snooper, just do a search for it in your search engine of choice, and you'll pretty much find it. And then what this is showing you is these are monitoring stations all around your area. And this is where the National Weather Service is being able to crowdsource some additional data. And they're mostly looking at winds. It's looking for red flag warnings that are here in Southern California. And if you click in the upper right-hand corner on that page, this is called the hamburger menu because it kind of looked like a hamburger. There's 3 little dashes that are up there. You can go ahead and click on that, and inside a little pull down, there's a button that you can click on that says map. And look, it works on your mobile phones as well. And what it does is it takes and generates a map of the region, and all of those little circles, those are the monitoring sites in your area. The colors are in stages. So yellow, so if they're white, all right, it's some amount of time. You might see the size of the circle is showing you how much wind is currently there. But as you start looking at the colors, that's over time. This is sustained winds. These are those sustained buildups of over time. And so the red means you're in a red flag warning at that area. So you can then tap on one of those little circles and you can get all of the data. In fact, you can even click here in order to get to an hourly table, and it'll show you over time for that particular monitoring station what the wind speeds have been doing. It's also going to tell you what the relative humidity is. Here, this is what you're looking for, the east northeast. This is blowing at 29 miles per hour with gusts, the G, to 65 miles an hour. So this is some pretty heavy winds that are going on here. And there's a lot of other information here. And this is what the National Weather Service is using when they're starting to determine whether or not they're going to issue a red flag warning. And you can see right where the red flag warnings are right there on the map. It's really cool for that site. So there's your tax dollars at work. Great job. Thank you, National Weather Service. So what do you need to listen live to the information? Remember, I was listening initially to all of my to my phone, and so really these days you need PulsePoint. You need an app on your phone. If you're outside of the disaster zone, pretty much you've got internet, you've got access to power. You can listen to what's going on. Just hit that little speaker button, and you can listen in on what's happening at the time. Now, let's say you're a little closer in, you might have power out. You want to get that extra 30 seconds, minute. You want those ham radio superpower kinds of things. So what are some of your options? Well, the first option is to get yourself a scanner. And these are not cheap, but they will do the job. Not everywhere has fully unencrypted information. So some agencies are going to encrypted data. So you may not be able to pick up these in your area. You may not be able to pick up all the feeds in your particular area, but a lot of them, especially emergency communications and fire, are still unencrypted that you can listen to. So that's one option. You can pick yourself up a SDR, a software defined radio. These things are ridiculously cheap. And by ridiculously cheap, I mean, I just got one in this week, and I got it on Amazon for about $28, $29. Just look for RTL-SDR. It's a simple little SDR radio. You plug it into the USB port. You do have to have an antenna that's on the other side of it. You plug that in and you're pretty much good to go. It will take a little bit of setting up in order to make it so that you can actually get it to work. But that is definitely the cheapest of the options available, and you can live listen with a simple little SDR radio. The third option here is to grab your ham radio, and most every ham radio that is a 2 meter, 70 centimeter radio, a lot of them can listen outside of the ham bands. They can't necessarily transmit outside of the ham bands. You do not want to transmit outside of the ham bands. You do not want to transmit in any of these frequencies that we're listening to, because they're emergency communications frequencies, but you can listen to them a lot of times. You can dial it in, and most of your ham radios will be able to do this. By the way, you don't need a mobile station to be able to do this. A lot of times, little HT, one of those cheap little bow things, you can get one of those and just use it as a scanner to be able to listen to these frequencies in order to hear what's going on for your situational awareness. And Dan's going to talk a little bit more about scanners here in just a minute. So then the question comes, well, where do you listen live? Well, the best way to do that is fire up your search engine of choice, whatever that happens to be. Type in something like your particular county or city or whatever's radio frequency, more than likely what you're going to find from, say, the Google is you're going to find something that looks like this. You're going to get to a website that's called radioreference.com. More than likely, this is the very first link that's going to show up, and it's going to pretty much take you to the page that's going to have the frequency information that you're looking for. And oh, did I mention this is for listening only? Definitely, this is for listening only. Do not transmit on any of these frequencies. Because notice they are outside of the ham bands. Here's the frequencies listed over here. For instance, the one that you're most likely going to be looking for is the one that says dispatch in the description. That's where your incident commander, more than likely, that's where a lot of these calls are going to be coming out from. And so that's, if you're only going to listen to one, if you're only going to have one frequency plugged in, that's the one to plug in your dispatch frequency. So you have that situational awareness, you know, kind of what's going on. If the incident gets really large, well, then you might need a command frequency. And so notice there are a variety of these. There's not just one. And when you're listening, how do you know which command frequency to go to? Well, you listen to dispatch. Dispatch is going to tell you. They're going to say, you know, engine 34, you know, go to whatever location, command 2. And that means go to the command 2 frequency to get your other additional communications and information. So it might be that in a larger situation, you need to be able to jump to that information in order to be able to find that. In some situations, you might want to listen to the tactical channels. Now, this is the back and forth channels that's going on very locally. Maybe you're in an area where it's, you know, the fire is right up close to where you're at. And you kind of really want to know that situational awareness, like what's going on, or are they able to deal with it? Do we need to get up and run pretty quickly? That's another one that you may want to do. But for the most part, the dispatch is the one that you're looking for to be able to have that. So where else might you want to listen? Well, first of all, your EmComm's group comm plan. Most everybody who's here on the call is a member of, say, an Aries or an Oxcom, or maybe your state agency or so forth, and you have a communications plan. Those are those frequencies that you're definitely going to want to be involved with and be listening to. These other ones are kind of auxiliary ones that you're kind of want to build up your own awareness, but these are the ones that more than likely you're going to be jumping to quickly if you're going to be possibly deployed or something like that you're going to need that information. So your group's comm plan. Local ham radio repeaters. One of the things that I do living here in Southern California, we have a variety of repeater systems. So we've got the Darn system, the Papa system, the Win system is here. There's a Clara repeater system. There's several different ones, and I program all of them into my radio. I'm not members of all of them. I don't talk on all of them, but I do program them all in, and I make sure that I can access them, and I make sure I can access them in order to be able to listen in. So recently there was a big series of earthquakes that were going on out in Ridgecrest, and I knew, because I had spent some time working with the wind system, that I know that there are some wind system repeaters that are out there in that area, and then I can link into them. And so sure enough, when I jumped on to those repeaters from locally, what I could access, I could hear the traffic that was going on, and we could start to help from outside of the area and provide some additional information, even if we needed to just relay some stuff in. So your local ham radio repeaters, they're really key. All of your regional repeaters, that's what we're talking about there, your regional repeaters. You may want to listen to your GMRS and FRS frequencies, especially in your local community. That's usually where the non-hams are going to be. Having some of those radios, having the capabilities to be able to listen in on those is going to be, can be really helpful. CB radio frequencies. Let's say you're in an area and you're in a disaster area. We're trying to bring some large shipments or trucks in to try and get information. More than likely, they're not all going to be on the ham frequencies, or they're not going to be on some of these other frequencies. They very well likely, the drivers may be on CBs. And so it's a good idea to have one of those that you can still be able to listen to. Likewise, for marine frequencies, here, we're right here on the coast. Everybody knows here that I've been living on my boat. And so being able to listen in on the marine frequencies is also pretty handy to be able to do as well. And ... more, whatever those happen to be. So with that, let me jump out of this. That's the base information that I had, and turn that off. We'll go back over to here, and let me see if I can find Let me see if I can find my window where I can pin Dan up here, because Dan had some information about scanners to talk about. So where are we? There you are. More, and let's pin Dan up. And you're on mute still, Dan.
Well, that's not helpful. Okay, so Chris has talked about some of the alternatives to having a scanner, and being a 30 or 40-year scanner enthusiast, I sort of am prejudiced to that. I think it offers you the best flexibility, and it doesn't have to be an expensive pursuit. It can be, like anything else. So let's start with a little bit of terminology that you might need to understand stuff that follows. Scanner is basically just a radio receiver that is designed to sequence through a number of pre-programmed frequencies until it finds an active one, in which case it stops until that channel stops being active. So it's a good way to monitor multiple channels at one time. Another term is conventional channels. These are just radio channels that are assigned either to an agency or a specific function. These are direct channels. They're not trunk channels, which we'll talk about here in a minute. These are very much like your ham channels, just individual frequencies, either with or without a PL tone. Trunking is kind of an interesting system. Most new radio systems that have more than 5 channels are being required to go to this trunking mode. And in trunking, rather than having a frequency assigned to an agency or a number of frequencies to a specific function, they use a computer in which the frequencies are stored, and each function within an agency is assigned a talk group. And whenever a member of that talk group keys their mic, the computer dips into the bucket of frequencies it has and picks an available frequency. The computer then switches everybody in that talk group to that frequency. The idea of that is that, unlike normal conventional systems, where you typically have 1 or 2 very busy frequencies and a bunch that rarely get used, this allows the load to be distributed over a smaller number of frequencies while still allowing the job to get done. To do this, the receiving radio, the scanner, has to know how to work in that trunk system. Most scanners that do trunking can operate on any of the several trunking systems that are out there. Then, of course, you have analog modulation, which is just like most our ham frequencies, and digital. There are several schemes for digital modulation. In public safety, the most common by far is P25, and there's 2 different versions of that. Phase 1 is the most common. They're going to phase 2 often now. And you're starting to see some agencies, typically smaller agencies that don't have really big budgets, will go to DMR because it's a little cheaper. Another term you're going to see when you're looking for a scanner is called banks. And this is just a way for memory management. Within the scanner, you can group like channels, whether they be an agency or a function within that agency. You can group those in single banks, and then you can tell the scanner, I want it to monitor just this bank or these 2 banks, these 3 banks, or all the banks. So it's a memory management scheme. And then the last one I have here is priority channels. Most scanners allow you to have at least one channel that is scanned more often because that's more important to you. Some of the more expensive scanners allow multiple priority channels. So how do you pick a scanner for your location? First thing you need to know is what frequency bands your area uses, and it may be more than one. Police may be on one band, fire on another band, etc. Typically, those are low VHF, not used much anymore, although California Highway Patrol still uses low VHF, and we pay a fine to the FCC every year because we're not supposed to be there, but the cost of the fine is much less than having to build out a whole new statewide system and a lot more repeater sites because the other frequency bands don't travel nearly as far. So we're on low VHF in California, but not a lot of use of that elsewhere. High VHF, which is very similar to our 2-meter ham band, kind of adjacent. UHF, which is adjacent to our ham band, and 800 megahertz, which happens to be what LA City Fire uses and is still pretty commonly used in the fire service. System type, this is where you need to know whether it's a conventional or a trunking system. In Southern California, there are a few trunk systems out there, but most everything is conventional individual frequencies for individual functions. Modulation type, whether it's analog, really it should be analog rather than conventional, analog or digital. A lot of the systems are going digital as they upgrade their equipment, but there's still a lot of conventional LAFD, LA County Fire, Ventura County are all still analog systems. Frankly, they're afraid to switch because they have systems that work pretty well now, and they just don't know going to digital what they're going to get. So, like I said earlier, P25 is the most common in public safety. DMR is starting to be used, and there are several other digital formats out there that you may find here or there. Next thing is you got to decide whether you want a handheld or a desktop or mobile scanner. Typically, the features are about the same. You may have fewer memories in a handheld. The advantage of the handheld, though, is that it runs on battery, so you should be able to go even when the power is out. Digital and mobile scanners tend to have more space, so the buttons may be further apart. You may have more buttons as opposed to multi-function buttons, and so that all would weigh into your decision. In terms of scanner brands, basically there are two. There are a couple of others out there, but almost, I'd say probably 80% or 90% of the market is either Uniden, which used to be called Bearcat before Uniden bought them, and then Whistler, which formerly was Gree, and a lot of the Radio Shack scanners out there were made by Gree, although Uniden did make some models for them. So how do you pick a scanner? Well, for conventional systems, you probably already have one. Most ham radios do have a scan function built in. It may have some deficiencies compared to a dedicated scanner, but you've already got it. I have a Yaesu FT8900 in my truck, and I have one side listening to the ACS repeater. I have the other side scanning LA City Fire Department, and it works beautifully for that purpose. One of the nice things about a lot of the Yaesus is they have wideband receivers and will receive very nicely up into the 800 megahertz band. Typically, if you use your ham radio, it's going to scan a little slower, and it may have some of the memory management features like banks, although a lot of the ham radios do have banks as well. Going to an entry-level scanner, and here we're talking about probably $100 to $150. Faster scanning. They may have fewer memories than the more expensive scanners, but typically they're going to have 100 memories or more, which for most people is enough. They may allow you to organize your scanners into or your frequencies into banks. Most do. A lot of them have the weather channels built in. Some even have weather alerts built in, so that if there's some kind of alert or warning, you would be notified of that. Most the entry-level scanners will not do 800 megahertz. So if your local agencies are on 800 megahertz, that may not be the way to go. Some, but not all, offer the ability to do the programming of the scanner by computer, which is really an advantage, especially if you have a lot of channels to program. Computer programming makes it a lot easier. Going to your mid-level to high-end scanners, they scan faster. They typically have more memories and more banks. A lot of them will have 10 banks of, say, 50 channels. So you can organize your memories into functions or groups or whatever works for you. They almost all have 800 megahertz capability. Almost all are software programmable. And Chris mentioned earlier radio reference, which is an outstanding source for radio frequencies. It's the only one I know of that is dynamically updated. Most the others are just a list somebody typed up. And if frequencies or uses change, they typically fall out of currency pretty quick. Radio Reference is constantly updating their database to reflect changes. And if you are a premium subscriber to Radio Reference, you can often download systems directly into your scanner from Radio Reference. In other words, not just by going frequency by frequency, but you can bring the entire system in one import into your scanner, which is really an advantage for complicated systems, especially trunk systems. Programming a trunk system manually is pretty complex. Digital systems. In a digital scanner, they typically come with the P25 ready. Unfortunately, most of the Uniden scanners, if you want DMR or any of the others, you have to pay an extra fee for those. They're downloadable, so you don't have to physically have the scanner updated. You have to do it, or you can do it. They're virtually all software programmable, and again, you can do the radio reference download. When you get into these digitals, there is a steep learning curve on these, and programming is a little bit difficult. The good news is it's usually pretty easy to find open box scanners, digital scanners, because so many of them get returned because people just can't figure them out. One of the neat things is some of them, you can enter a zip code and it will automatically enter all of the frequencies for your area. Now you're going to get a lot of stuff you don't need, so you're going to have to go and probably either erase or lock out a lot of stuff you don't need, but that is one way to make it a lot easier. And then the top of the line digital scanners are featuring software-defined radio tuners. Some of them do a really incredible job of decoding the digital. Uniden makes two scanners, a handheld and a mobile version, that are really great in terms of decoding the digital signals, and very, very good sensitivity. They're about $700, so they aren't cheap. So that's that. Let me go back here. I've got a couple of scanners. This is an older model Uniden digital scanner. It's a neat scanner. It works very well for me. I think they're still available around the BCD 395 or 396, I think. And you're going to pay probably $400 for that. But it's a good scanner. It does a pretty good job of decoding. And I like it because it's portable. And like I say, you can use AA batteries, so you don't have to worry about recharging it. You can. It can use rechargeable batteries, but it'll use throwaway batteries. This is probably the least expensive digital mobile scanner. This is made by Whistler. It's a WS1065. I think these are about $300 on Amazon. Does a really good job. Not as good as the top of the line, but this is my day-to-day go-to scanner, and like it a lot. It is programmable. You do have to pay for the software. It's about $30 to $50 depending on which version you buy. But it's a good scanner. I find these a little easier to manually program than the Uniden scanners. I think the Uniden scanners perform a little better, so there's a trade-off, and they're fairly comparably priced for similar features. But there are a lot of different choices out there within the brands. For a digital scanner, like I say, you're going to pay $300 to $700. For a conventional scanner, if you don't have digital in your area that you need to listen to, you're talking probably $100 to $300, depending on the feature set that you want. And that's all I've got. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Dan. Let me go ahead and switch over here because I also want to show you very briefly. Oops, wait a minute, go to that one. So I've got a little demo that I want to do. This is the scanner that I picked up. It is one of the Uniden ones. It's called the Home Patrol 2. It has a GPS in it also, which is really nice. So I did a drive across the country, and it will automatically reprogram itself as you're driving or as you're moving, and it will retune into the local frequencies. That's really cool that this thing does. It's touch screen. I got the batteries out of it right now, and you just plug in a connector. It's got a little SMA connector on it. I put a little BNC adapter, so it's easy to adapt in. But this is it's working really well for me. So, but the thing that I wanted to show you really quickly before we wrap this up is one of the things that I talked about a little while ago. Remember, I mentioned that hams were listening to air support transponder data and mapping it. It's like an information superpower. This was one of the things that really keyed me into saying, I want to get my ham radio license. I want to learn how to do a lot of this information. So let me jump back over, and I've got it working now. So this is the complete station that you can see here. I'm just using my Microsoft Surface. I've got a USB adapter. This is that little RTL SDR dongle. It's $28 on Amazon. They're basically throwaways. You can find them pretty much anywhere. I've just got the SMA connector is connected to a little adapter that goes into a little mag mount antenna. Now the frequency for being able to do this is not what this antenna is tuned to, but it still works. So this is just a regular old ham radio antenna here. So I'm going to open up a couple of software packages really quickly. The first one, and we may do another show later on that this is like how to do some of this stuff. But this is a little program called RTL 1090. And you can see 1090 because that's the frequency that it's going to listen to. I'll just click the start button. And what that's doing is it's talking to the SDR, and it's using the antenna, and it is already brought up on the scope, and it's bringing up some live data. It's picking up over the air. And even though I'm pretty much inside of a Faraday cage here in the house, because we've got stucco and there's metal all around me, look at that, it's picking up some data. But that's cool. That's not showing me all the information that I would really like. So there's this other application called Plane Plotter. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK because I'm still learning how to use this. The blue line around here, this is where my station has been able to hear traffic on. Now notice there's nothing showing up right here because I've got to come up here to the upper left corner, click the little start button. And if the demo gods are with us, we should begin seeing, there's one right there. We should see a plane. There's another plane right there. These are planes that are actively flying over the area right now. And I'm live picking up their transponders, and it is mapping them directly on here. Now, let's say you're in your group's communications trailer or something like that. This would be a great little thing to be able to set up and just have up there on a screen so that you can start to track. And you can see I do have the little contrails that are starting to show up just a little bit right there. If you have access to the internet, you can, of course, click this button here, and that will then start synchronizing your data up to some of the servers. So you're able to crowdsource your data back out into some of the other folks that are doing this, as well as pull their data in. And so now you can start to see all of the planes that are in the area. And yeah, you can, of course, click on one of these. You can see the track that it's on. Click on it, you can see a little more information that's down in the corner and so forth. You can get a Google photo of that particular plane. And that is what that plane right there is. So kind of fun to be able to set up, and literally it was all the equipment that I already had. I just picked up a brand new one of these SDR dongles because I'm going to set one of these up here at the house and have it run all the time on a Raspberry Pi, which will be a future project for us. But while I'm signed into this guy over here, let me switch over to the PC so we can see the overall here. That's actually, I should let me bring this up so it's a little easier to see on the screen for everybody. There you go. There's all those little planes that are flying around. It's a little bit easier to see what's happening there. All right. So let me minimize this, minimize that. Let's do a final check of our Winlink check-ins to see where we're at for the day.
Chris, before you do that, let me share my
sure.
screen real quick here.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry, we're running a little long today.
Yeah, let's see. Now, why did I get that?
Click to exit the presentation is what we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. Are you seeing the Flight Radar 24 now?
We are seeing the Flight Radar 24.
Okay, this is an app that you can log into, flightradar24.com, and you can see there's a helicopter going through here. And if I click on it, it'll bring up, as if Chris's app did, a picture of the helicopter, where it took off from, where it's going, if they know. But in a fire, you see it's showing its path. Here we got another, looks like a Southwest flight. You can click on that. Very handy in an emergency, particularly a fire for us, because as Chris showed earlier, you can see the flight path. You can see what helicopters or what aircraft are on the fire. And best of all, you can see where they're circling, which will give you a good idea where the fire is. So here's another one. No photo of that, but it's going from Oxnard to unknown place. Anyway, just thought I'd show that as an option for, you don't have to download anything. You just log into that site.
Yeah.
Back to you, Chris.
All right. So let's do a quick check here. See what else is, see if we've gotten any more check-ins that have come in. I've done this a couple of times in the background. So we do have, we have quite a few check-ins coming in. I'll go ahead and download those. If anybody is still not sent in their check-in, go ahead and do that real quick. I'll do one more quick check, and then we will bring up the map and see where folks are coming in from today. So there we go. We'll come over here. And again, if you want to map any of your check-in forms, just make sure folks are sending those check-in forms to you or to a tactical call sign that you have registered inside of your Winlink program. And then once you've received them, if they're a mappable form, you can click here on the little globe icon right in your toolbar, and you just select which of the forms that you want to look at. So I'm going to map this Winlink check-in. And I know we say every week, make sure you send us this check-in via the Winlink check-in form. And we always get a couple of people that'll just send us an email. We really appreciate those. But if you do send using that form, then you should appear here on the map. So I'm going to go ahead and display the map here. And I'll go ahead and blow that out to full screen, and let's zoom out to get a kind of global view. If you want to pan the map around, you use the right click button, hold that down and just kind of pan over, and we can see who we've got coming in. We've got Bill coming in here, KH6UU from Hawaii. Aloha. Thanks for joining us. It looks like we've got Terry down here in ZL land, ZL1HOG. Looks like we've got Roland, yeah, DG1GHR joining us in there from Germany. Hey, thanks for joining us there. Let's go ahead and zoom in on North America a little bit. We'll get a tighter view. Again, I'm going to hold down the right click button and then drag over. Right click and drag, and there we go. And here we've got Victor Echo 3, Yankee X-Ray joining us from Canada up there. Thanks for joining us. And we got folks joining from all over the place here. N9, NMR, KE0, RKM. Time for new glasses. Here from Missouri, KH0FZV. Down here, we got a couple in here. There we go. I'm just going to roll over a few more of these. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us this week and for checking in. It's great to see you checking in. We got a lot more people down here in Florida this week. Wonder if folks are down there just traveling or what's going on. There's a lot more people in there. There's John, KC5LAA joining us from down near Houston, and there's King KC7LOX. Up here in Colorado, Utah, some of our friends up here in Idaho, and up all the way up here in the Pacific Northwest, way up in Seattle and New Jersey. There we go. Come on down here into Northern California area. Lots of you guys joining in, and a whole slew of folks here in Southern California joining us. We really appreciate that. Even folks over there in Las Vegas. So thanks very much for joining us and for sending in all of your check-ins. We really appreciate all of that. Let me bring Dan back up to screen and see if I can switch myself over. There we are. Dan, what kind of thoughts you got here to wrap us up? You're on mute still.
Sorry. I think we pretty well covered it. Scanning, listening. Chris said it, do it before the disaster or the emergency happens. I was in law enforcement for 20 years, and I'd get ride-alongs would ride along with me in the car, and I'd pick up on something on the radio, and they'd go, "How did you hear that?" Particularly because my agency shared a frequency with an adjacent agency. So half the calls weren't for my department at all. And people were impressed that I could hear that. But after you listen for a while, you pick up on call signs, tones of voice, very important tones of voice. Chris told his story about hearing them talk about evacuating the Ventura, but he didn't tell you the other part about a little open mic moment that happened in conjunction with that. And needless to say, somebody at the IC was really worried about what they were seeing and expressed it in language you might not normally want to go over the air, but you pick up on that not only in words itself, but in tones of voice. And so practice listening. You need to do that for EmComm work anyway, but practice listening, play with the scanner or whatever it is you're going to use. And like I say, most of us already have a radio capable of scanning, and you just got to program in the frequencies and go and just play with it.
One of the things that I definitely learned, and I didn't really mention a whole lot here as I was going through this, is when you're listening to all of these different channels, one of the big challenges that I found myself having, and I always wear headphones a lot of times, and I've got some audio gear. I can route some audio switchers together so I can like merge all of the sounds all into my headphones, and that turns out to not be very helpful, because when you start listening to multiple different conversations all at one time, being able to locate the different radios, the different speakers, that different conversations are coming out of, it can end up being really helpful. So what I've found myself doing a lot of times is I'll listen to my scanner and start to kind of pick up on the general conversation that's going on. Maybe a command channel will come on, so I'll use one of the other sides of one of my radios to be able to dial in and listen to that one. But I want to make sure I separate that speaker out so that it's coming out of a different physical location. So if I need to really focus in on one thing, I can kind of look over at it and kind of like focus in on that. And then as I need to listen to additional frequencies, I may have a couple of other radios going all at the same time, but keeping them all coming out of different locations is can be really helpful. So, hey, if you enjoy what we're doing here, if you find what we're doing very helpful, please go onto the YouTube channel for us. Go to youtube.com/WaveTalkers. Like and subscribe to our channel and to the content. If you really find what we're doing helpful, be sure to share it with the other members of your group and your teams to make them aware of us and to be able to come and join us to some of these shows. And you still find what we're doing super helpful, then go on to wavetalkers.com. We've got the Buy Us a Coffee link that's on there. It will certainly help to support all the infrastructure that it takes to keep all of this stuff up and running and keep us doing this every single week because we're really enjoying doing it, and we see a lot of people seem to be benefiting from that. So it's something we're definitely trying to keep up and running all the time. And so with that, I think we'll sign off on the live streams, and then if you're here inside of the Zoom session, then hang around for the after party. If you'd like to join us for one of these after parties, just go into wavetalkers.com. Down in the footer, there's a join us link. You can sign up. We send out an email every single week to let you know how to join us inside of the Zoom session. So you're able to do that and unmute your microphones and ask questions there during the after party. So thanks a lot for joining us, everyone. If you're out on the live streams, we'll see you next week. So we'll say 7-3 to you on that. I will wrap those up briefly, and then we'll jump into the after party. 7-3.